For Unit 5, Day 2 notes, the topic is isosceles and equilateral triangles. So the first half of the notes will be about isosceles triangles. And then this vocabulary just shows you different parts of isosceles triangle. So first of all, you have the vertex angle up here. Okay, then you have the two base angles. And the two base angles have to be congruent. And then you have two legs, and the legs of the triangle are congruent, they're equal to each other. And then the third leg is called the base, which is not congruent to the two legs. Okay. So down here, for example 1, using algebra to find angle measures in isosceles triangles. So if I look here, it says find angle J and find angle K. If I know that these two legs are congruent, I know this is an isosceles triangle, so my two base angles have to be the same. So here are my two base angles. So J has to be 68. Then in day 1, you learned that a triangle has a total of 180 degrees. So if I take my two 68-degree angles and add them together, we would get 136. If we subtract that from 180, we should get angle K, and if we subtract, we get 44. Okay, so K is 44, J is 68, which is the same as angle L. In part B, we look to see, okay, this is an isosceles triangle because we have these two congruent legs, so that means that these two angles are our base angles. They have to be congruent. And so what I would do is I would take 180 and I would subtract 106 from that. This angle up here, the vertex angle. So if I subtract those, we get 74. I know that angle E and angle C add together to be 74. So to figure out what they are, I just divide both of them by 2, or divide 74 by 2, and we get 37. So each angle here is 37 degrees. Okay, then for part C, it says find angle X and angle Y. So I'm going to go ahead and look at this 110 I was given, and I'm going to think about if this was not here, what kind of angle would I classify these two angles? And I would say they're supplementary because they're on a straight line, which is a straight angle, so that plus that has to be 180 degrees. So if I add them together, or if I would subtract that from 180, I would get this angle here. Okay? So let's do that first. So 180 minus 110 gives me 70. So I know that this is 70, but because this triangle is an isosceles triangle, given that these two legs are congruent, I know these two angles are congruent, my two base angles. So I automatically know that X is 70. Now, if I add 70 and 70 together, get my 140, and I subtract that from 180, I get Y, the remaining angle. Okay? And then also, if you were to check, these two angles have to equal the exterior angle. So 40 and 70 would add to be 110, which is the exterior angle. Okay, letter D. Okay, so for this one, we see that the big triangle here is an isosceles triangle. And this 54 goes to this angle A right here. Okay? And we also know that this angle C is also 54. And just the way the picture was drawn, it also gave us that these two angles here on either side are also congruent. And our goal is to figure out this one here. Okay? And because they're congruent, I know that segment BD is a bisector. Okay, so let's make a little note of that. Segment BD bisects which means cuts in half angle B. Okay. Now, if it bisects it, cutting this in half, this creates a 90-degree angle down here. And so you know that this is 90, this is 54. How do you figure out this other angle? That's the same as this angle. Well, add those together. So 54 plus 90. Okay, is 144. Subtract that from the 180. And we get 36 degrees. Okay. And then letter E. This one you need to draw out. So I'm going to draw an isosceles triangle. Okay. And pretend that it's an isosceles triangle. And it says in triangle RST, ST is congruent to RT. So I'm going to make this T so that this side is congruent to this side. Okay, so triangle RST, where ST is congruent to RT. Then it gives me all these expressions for the different angles. So angle R is 9x plus 2. Angle S is 13x minus 18. And then lastly, angle T is 17x plus 1. It says to find x and all the missing angle measurements. So first thing, I know that I have x in all of these expressions, but what do I do with all these expressions? If these two legs are congruent, these two angles are congruent. And so I can set these two expressions equal to each other to get x. So that's my first step. So I'm going to say 13x minus 18 equals 9x plus 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and solve that. So if I subtract 9, I get 4x. If I add 18, we get 20. And divide both sides by 4, we get 5. So we know that x is 5. Okay? And now it's a matter of plugging in. So for angle R, if I plug 5 in, we have 9 times 5 is 45. We add 2 to that, and we get 47. Now, because we've already discussed that R and S are congruent, we know that when we plug 5 into angle S, we should also get 47. So 13 times 5 minus 18 would be 65 minus 18, and that is 47. Okay, so I fill that in over here in my answer box. And then for angle T, you could add these together and subtract from 180, or you could just plug the 5 in to angle T expression. So 17 times 5 plus 1, and that gives me 85 plus 1, which is 86.